Good morning. Hope you're all doing well. We're starting at the last line of Lamed Testament Beis, and we're going to be learning today a number of agadatas about Bikur Cholim, about the mitzvah Bikur Cholim, its strengths and its impact in regards to whether or not a person can die or live because of Bikur Cholim. Some very powerful ideas in today's Gemara. Last line, the Gemara says Rav Chalbo Cholash. Rav Chalbo was not feeling well. Nafak ichriz Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana went out and he made an announcement. The announcement on the top of Mem Amud Aleph says, Rabbi Chalbo Boish. Rabbi Chalbo was sick. Rashi says, the Mefarish says on the top that Boish means chala. And it means that he was ill. And lo ika deka'asi, even though the announcement went out, they put it in the announcements, but nobody showed up to do Bikur Cholim. So Amar Lehu. So then Rav Kahana says to everyone, don't you guys know? Lo kachaya ma'aseh b'talmid echad mitalmidei Rabbi Akiva. Don't you know the story with Rabbi Akiva's student Shechala? He got sick. Lo nichnasu chachamim levakro. Nobody came to come visit him. V'nichnas Rabbi Akiva levakro. And Rabbi Akiva's like, guys, what's going on here? I'm doing Bikur Cholim. You should be doing Bikur Cholim as well. Ubishvil shekibdu b'rivtzu lefanav. And because when Rabbi Akiva went there, he cleaned the house. V'rivtzu lefanav. We've learned about this before, where you take water or wine and you sprinkle it in the house. They had dirt floors. It would keep the dust a little bit lower. Therefore, chaya, the patient who was sick, actually lived. P.S. How do we define Bikur Cholim here? What did Rabbi Akiva do? Physical things around the house. He helped to sweep and he helped to mat the dirt. That's what the Gemara seems to imply is part of the definition, at least part of the definition of Bikur Cholim. And Amar Le, the person who was sick, said to Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi, Heche Yisani, you kept me alive. Yotza Rabbi Akiva v'darash, and Rabbi Akiva gave the following drasha: Kol mi she'ein mevaker cholim, anyone who doesn't do the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim when a person is sick, ki'ilu shofech damim. It's as if they're part of the death of the patient. Ki asa Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi showed up, Amar kol mevaker esachola gorem lo sheyichle, v'chol she'ein mevaker esachola gorem lo sheyamos. If you're going to do Bikur Cholim, it's as if you're going to keep them alive, and if you don't do Bikur Cholim, then you're part of the reason why the person dies. So my garma, what is it that you're causing? So says the Gemara, if you want to say that it's really about tefillah, that when we're going to visit a person and we're going to daven that he lives, and the opposite is also true, that that's not possible. You're going to daven that somebody dies? That's impossible. Says the Gemara, that can't be pshat. So again, back to our question, what is pshat in regards to this gram that's causing a person to either die or live? The Gemara says a third of the way down, that if a person is going to not do Bikur Cholim, the person's not in their mind, you're not going to daven for that person, and then your lack of tefillah could be part of that which causes the person to die. And the Gemara here, where is this? The top of Mefarish on the page has a very shocking comment. We actually saw this once before in Shas. Not Mefarish, excuse me. The top Ran on the page, outer margin. The Ran says, Dibur Masklan, Nevakish al Rachmim lo Sheichi v'lo Shiamos, Nir be'enai tachi kamar. Pamim, there are times, shetzarich levakish rachmim ala chol shiamos. Wow. That there are times, says the Gemara, that it's considered appropriate, I guess, I don't know what the right words are here, is to daven that a person should not live. And says the Gemara, if a person's in a tremendous amount of pain and there's no chance that they're going to live, and the Gemara gives an example of this, and then 6 lines down into the Ran, second of the short lines, he says, Amra, that the upper one should win over the lower ones, Klomar, Dilemus. So this Ran is... this is like euthanasia. This is like really, I mean, you can't actually push a drug, but this Gemara is saying that you could, on the religious side, ask for a person to die. Again, the two metrics that he gives is pain and terminal illness. Under those circumstances, a person is allowed to not allowed to. It seems appropriate to daven for such a thing. Don't do anything like that without speaking to a competent posek, which I am not. I'm not a posek at all. Ask the rabbis, but that's what the Ran seems to say. Anyways, back in our Gemara, and this is a musar for us, simply by not doing anything, that alone could be a detriment to a chola. So that's why you'll see people who have, Mr. Shiur has a list of cholim that he davens from regularly. People have this in their sidurim, in their books, in their pockets. It's a beautiful thing, but it's not just beautiful. It may well be our mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, things along those lines. The halachic parameters, I don't know, but certainly a very strong idea. Rava, Yom HaKad this Rava on the first day that he was sick, should we make a Tehillim group for him? Should we not make a Tehillim group for him? The Gemara says, Amar lo, and he said to them, Lo tiglu le'inish, please don't tell anyone that I'm sick yet. It's only day one. They can go both ways. Maybe I'll get healthier quickly. Maybe I'll degrade quickly. We don't know. And he says, De lo lisra mazle, I don't want to ruin my mazel. This is kind of the idea of like, in Poskan Pelasata, and we don't want to like talk about it. It's okay, I have a cold. It doesn't mean I have anything serious. Just leave it be for now. Fine. However, mikan va'elech, once the disease progressed for another, seemingly the next day, that's what it seems like, then Amar lahon poku ve'ichrizu b'shukov. You can go out and you can announce to everyone that I'm sick. Dechol desani li lichtili. Anyone who's going to hate me, he's going to be happy that I'm sick. And that's a schus for me. Why? Because the pasuk says, bin poleivecha al tismach, and the rest of the pasuk reads, Uve kashlo al yageli becha pen yireh Hashem v'rabba einai v'heishiv me'alav apo. And a Kadosh Baruch Hu, if you're going to laugh at me when I'm sick, Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to remove his chema from me and make me better. So Rava, this was part of Rava's svara. For the people who don't like me, they're going to be happy. That's good for me. Uderachimli, the people who love me, liboy alay rachme. Those people are going to daven for me. Matov manoim. Guys, a win-win. So this was his bifurcation. In the very early stages, when we don't have, and again, in our parlance, when we don't have a diagnosis yet, it can go either way, not room for public discussion. Leave it alone. In fact, you probably shouldn't, because it's Re'a Mazle. We're afraid it's going to ruin your mazel. Mashen Kain, if a person already knows that they have a diagnosis, again, still adding our language here, I don't know what this would be in halachic terms, but something along those lines. So then it's appropriate to share that information. Halfway down, Amarav, the person himself, the Mavakir, the person who does Bikkur Cholim, they are saved from the din of Gehenim Shene'emar. Ashrei maskil el dal b'yom ra'ayim alateyu Hashem. Happy is the person who's maskil el dal, who thinks about seichel, who thinks about the poor person. Dal, in this case, we'll soon see, is a chole. That person, b'yom ra'ayim alateyu Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to save that person doing Bikkur Cholim, saves a person from Medina Shel Gehenim. Ein dal elachole. How do we know? Shnamar midollah yivatzeni. Inami min hadein kraf. From another pasuk, madua takocha dal ben hamelach baboker begomer. So that's just how we understand that the word dal means that way. And ein ra el gehenim. How do we know that ra is gehenim? We actually don't need a pasuk for that, because we know conceptually what it is, but there is a text proof. The Gemara says 3 lines before the wide lines, kol poal Hashem l'maneu v'gam rasha liyom ra. Fine. Being bikar mascharo, the Gemara says, if in fact you do bikar cholim, what's your reward? Says the Gemara, you just told me what the reward was. What do you mean mascharo? Kidamar, nitzol medina shel gehenim. Says the Gemara, yeah, that's in the next world. Really, the question is, what's the schar in this world for Bikkur Cholim? So says the Gemara, Hashem yishmerehu v'chayehu v'osher ba'aretz v'al titneu b'nefesh oyevav. Kadosh Baruch Hu will be shomer, he'll protect you, he'll keep you alive, he'll make you happy in the land, and he will not put you into the hands of your enemies. Hashem yishmerehu, what does that part of the pasuk mean? Mi yetzer hara. So this is for a person who's struggling with their yetzer hara. We have a lot of suggestions in Chazal. One of them is to do Bikkur Cholim. Who knew? But that's what the pasuk says. A person by Hashem Yishmerehu, if a person does Bikkur Cholim, it minimizes, removes, again, words are hard to put here. It helps protect a person from the Yetzer B'chayehu. What does that mean? Min ha-yisurim. If a person's struggling with Yisurim or suffering from Yisurim, they should do Bikkur Cholim. V'osher ba'aretz, what does that mean? Sheyehu hakol miskabdim bo. Strange language there, miskabdim bo, people become honored through him. That's how the literal translation works. And v'al tineu b'nefesh oyevav, what does that mean? She is damnu lo reim k'na'amon. There will be people who have friends like Naaman. She'eripo esarasa story with Elisha. He told him to go into the water and dip 7 times. He thought it was below his kavod, but Naaman went to his friends and said, should I listen to Elisha? They said, yes, you should. And in fact, he was healed. Good to have good friends. What's the last part of the pasuk? By what does it mean you shouldn't have bad friends? Kirechavam. Shechilku es malchusa. By Rechavam, he listened to his friends and it ruined the government. What was this talking about? Tanya, the Brisa writes. Just a little bit of background is that when Rechavam took over, the son of Shlomo, when Rechavam took over, he was deciding if he should increase taxes or decrease taxes. So this is the context of the Gemara over here. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer, im yomru lecha yeladim b'nei, if the younger generation says you should build, uzakenim sesor, but the older generation says you should destroy, shma lezakenim, v'al tishma liyeladim. And here is the godless of this Gemara. Listen to this line. Shebinyan yeladim stira. When children build, it's actually destructive. Ustiras zakenim binyan. This is, of course, talking about high levels of wisdom, of having a deep understanding of whether or not you're right or wrong. So when people are young, and I think, I don't know which category we're in, because we're like half of us are middle-aged. I don't know. For people who are young, we think we understand the scope of things, but often we don't. And when we make a decision of, let's build this building, you're actually harming a community. And the wise people say, tear down that building. They know more. So that's why the Gemara has this really perfect line. Binyan Yeladim Sisira, Ustira Zakanin Binyan. V'simin Ladavar Rechavam ben Shlomo. Because Rechavam decided to listen to the young people who said, yeah, increase taxes, it'll be good for you. That led to a revolt, that led to a split. Amar Rav Shisha Bereder Rav Idi, 3/4 of the way down. Lo lisod inish ktsira. A person should not have a meal with a sick person. Lo betlas shay kadmaisa, meaning you shouldn't really visit during these first 3 hours of the day. Lo betlas shay basraisa diyoma. A person should not do bikur cholim during the first 3 hours of the day and during the last 3 hours. Why? Because we don't want a person who experiences those first 3 hours and last 3 hours to mistake the status of the person who's ill and not daven for him. What is the Gemara talking about? So the Gemara explains. During the first 3 hours of the day, you just had a good night's sleep. You just got all your medications. Rav Chadaite. The person doesn't look as sick as he normally is. He's okay. He has Harchavas Hadas. He's okay today. Or at least he looks okay. Says the Gemara, and at the end of the day, when you're trash tired, it's been a long day, they did physical therapy, you're wiped out. So then the Gemara says, you look terminal, you look like a disaster. So in the morning, when you look great, people aren't going to daven for you. And in the night, when you look terrible, no one's going to daven because they think you're going to die. So therefore, those are not the good hours to visit. Amar Rav and Amar Rab, Minan Shekadosh Baruch Hu Zanas Achola. How do we know that Kadosh Baruch Hu sustains Achola? Shnamar Hashem Yisadenu al Eres Tavai. That Kadosh Baruch Hu is soed, which normally means to feed, but here it just means to support al Eres Tavai on a deathbed. Amar Rav and Amar Rab, Minan She'ashchina Shreya L'Malim Mitaso Shel Chola. How do we know that the Shechina dwells above the Mita of Achola? Says the Gemara, Shnamar Hashem Yisadenu al Eres Tavai on. And Tanyan HaMehachi, the Bryce agrees with this because the Nichnas of Akra Sacholem, and this is a tough Mishnah to understand in light of what we learned in our Mishnah a couple of blot ago. HaNichnas of Akra Sacholem, if a person visits a Cholem, Lo Yeshev al Gabe Mita, he should not sit on the same bed as the Cholem, Velo al Gabe Safsal, and not on a bench, Velo al Gabe Kise, and not on a chair. Ella misatef, he should wrap himself, seemingly some type of head wrap. The Yoshev al Gabe Karka. Why should he sit on the ground? Bipnei she'ashchina shruya l'mala mimitaso shel Cholem. Because the Shekhinah is above the bed. This is the Brisa. This Gemara poses a problem because we learned already that a person should not sit at all when he is going to do. Remember, we learned this by the Isra Hana, by the beginning of the parak, by the beginning of the Mishnah. A person's doing Bikur Cholim for someone who's Mudar Hana, he should stand up and he should not sit. But here the Gemara says you should sit on the floor. So which one is it? So the Ran here, without asking this question, hints to it, a third of the way down, Dibur Maskil, Lo Yeshev al Gabe Mita v'lo Gabe Safsal, Ikaman to Amar Dedavka K'shehachole Shochev al Gabe Karka. Here we must be talking about a case where a person is lying on the floor and they're sick. We don't want it to be the case where the mevakir, the visitor, is at a higher plane, a higher height than the chola. That's why here he has to sit on the floor. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense with our previous Gemara. Again, the Ran wasn't specifically asking that question. He didn't say that, but maybe he was hinting to that challenge. I don't know. 3 lines from the bottom, another comment of the same person. Amar Ravin, Amar Rav, Mitra b'ma'arava, when there's a lot of rain in the west, in Eretz Yisrael, Sahada Rabba Pras, there's a lot of testimony to that rain in Pras, in Bavel. Why? Because Bavel was a lower plain and the waters would run down the mountains. Again, it's a long trip, but the waters would run down the mountain and the rivers in Bavel would raise when the water would come from Eretz Yisrael. So when they had a lot of rain, they knew that in the west, by the mountain, this place of Eretz Yisrael, they knew that there was a lot of rain. Hupliga de Shmuel. This idea that the Ma'arava, that the rain from the Ma'arava would create a swell for Bavel is not necessarily what Shmuel thought. Amar Shmuel, Nara, mikipe misparich. The Nara, a river, doesn't necessarily get higher because of water per se, but rather mikipe misparich, from, I think they call it the water table, from what's under the ground, like the springs under the rivers, those things become a little bit more full. There's a Gemara elsewhere that says for whatever 1 unit of water that enters a river, 2 units of water come up from the water table, from underneath, from springs. So therefore, what we see from Shmuel is that he doesn't agree with this idea that it's just a raya of the rain. Maybe it's not because of the rain. Maybe it's because of the water table. Maybe it's because there's more water coming in from the springs. But then Shmuel actually contradicted himself. It was Pliga de Shmuel ad Shmuel. What did Shmuel say that conflicted with this? Just so that you understand how complicated this is, I want you to turn the page and look how much Ran there is, just so that you can see that this is not a simple sugya. We are not going into the sugya. It's a big sugya in Hilchos Mikvaos, and we'll go through on a relatively surface level. A person, typically speaking, can't go to a mikvah where the waters aren't still. You can't be matahar with waters that are zochel. Ella pras bimei tishrei bilvad, except for the waters in Bavel during the months of Tishrei alone. What does that mean? So during the months of Tishrei, in that space, so it's September, October, very dry. That's not the rain season. The rainy season is more the winter. So there's not a lot of water there. And there the waters are considered to be appropriate for a mikvah. So that's a little bit strange because we thought that the waters in the pras only grew when there was rainwater. Here it implies that the springs would even fill up the water levels even during the times when there's no rain. So Shmuel has a stira within himself. Do we say that the water volumes increase, the rain creates the water table to rise? Or no, do we say that the water tables rise even without the rain? So that's a stira within Shmuel. As you can see, there's a lot to work through over here in regards to that first round, which is very large. And if you see about almost halfway down, he says, Inyan halacha. You can see there that he has a long arichus as well. And all of the next man d'amrin, all the next man d'amrin of the Ran are all in the same sugya. So this is a very, very big sugya. We're not going to dig into it now, of course. We don't have time, and I don't really know it. So that would be a second reason. Maybe that's the first reason, but we'd have to spend a lot of time learning it. But it's a bit of a machlokes in how Shmuel understands that water flows in Bavel. Do we say that it's rain triggered, or do we say that it's from the water table? And the Gemara says, and we've seen this Gemara elsewhere, the Gemara says, Avua de Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, Avad Lahon, he made for the women in his family mikvos lebenase. He made mikvos for the girls, beyome Nisan, in the times of Nisan, umafse beyome Tishrei. So he made them mikvos in the times of Nisan. And umafse, he made them mats in the days of Tishrei. What he was concerned about with the mats, machlokes in the Rishonim, what he was concerned about is something either for them to slip on, because the mud could be very slippery, or he was concerned about a halachic issue of going to the mikvah, which is chatzitza. We know that when a woman has to go to the mikvah, she has to check her body very carefully to make sure that there's no chatzitza. And he was afraid that if she were to step in the mud would adhere to her legs in a way where it would be a chatzitza. So then even when she'd go into the actual depths of the water, where she's completely submerged in the water, but maybe she's not going to be kosher because it's a problem. So this shaila has come up many times. Someone in the community, a woman was going to go to the mikvah. She said, I just got my nails done for Yontif, the permanent gel, no chip, $50 gig for the nails. It's like, what is it? Like a half of an ounce of liquid for $50. Okay, it's expensive. She said, but I'm going to the mikvah tonight. So I said, why would you put on, you know this, why would you put on nail polish the day before you know you're going to the mikvah? You're in Shevanakim. Everybody knows you're going to, well, not everybody knows, but you know you're going to the mikvah. I said, why would she? And she said the following story. She said, I can't imagine being in Yontif without nail polish. Can't imagine. So I called her Rabbi Rob and said, I'm like, this is, I don't understand. Is it really a kvod Yontif to have nail polish when it's against the minhag? Because Ladina, technically, if a woman goes to the mikvah with nail polish on, technically, the mikvah counts. It's not called a chatzitza. Why not? Because when a woman goes to the mikvah, when anyone goes to a mikvah, a chatzitza is only defined as rubo umakbid, 51% of your body, and you have to care about it. That's all. That's basic. Here it's miut ve'eno makbid. It's the exact opposite. It's a minority. It's a tiny part of your body. And eno makbid, she wants them there. She's not makbid that they shouldn't be there. She's makbid they should be there. So Ladina, the mikvah works. But Rabbi Robinson was not a big fan. He said, you give this to her as the last out. You're not giving her this kula again. So I was just stern about it. I said, and I was very strong. I said, I think you know and I know that this is not the way to do things. It's not ideal. This is the last time you're getting this kula, and do not put on nail polishing. You won't get the kula again. It's mutter, but like you're toying, you're like playing around. And Ray Robinson told me that there's like other places where women put on these eyelashes that are literally glued to your eyelids, which is a chatzitza, but it's miyud ve'eno makbid. This is like a subculture that exists in Klal Yisrael, and it's not the right way to do things. Is it mutter? Maybe it's mutter, but b'ashkafa, it's not the right way to do things. It's not the right way to do things. Okay, so that's the dinim in chatzitza. Last little sugya for the day. We're going to go about 8 lines down on Mem Aleph, Amud Aleph, and then we'll be all done. Amar Rav Ami, Amar Rab. What does it mean that you, Ben Adam, you humans, should make for yourselves klei gola, utensils for the galus? So this is a pasuk in Yechezkel. And apparently the trend was by Yechezkel that a lot of the nevuos that he was given were like actions that were like mishalim, that we should kind of learn from the mishalim. It says the Gemara, Zener uke'ara v'shatiach. It should be a candle, it should be a bowl, and it should be a mat. So Rashi says, the Rashi Mefarish says, or le'echol alav. It's going to be a mat that you'd eat off of. I guess a placemat, a bowl, a plate of some kind, a portable travel mat of some kind. And it was a little bit of a remez that you're going to be going into Galus. So that was what he was told to make. And then people would look at what Yechezkel was doing and be like, Galus is on its way. And let's learn another pasuk, Bechoser Kol. This pasuk, let's just find the source here, is found in Sefer Dvarim. The Gemara says, "V'vatas ha'esoivecha asher yishalachenu Hashem bach b'rav u'v'tzamo u'v'eirom u'v'choser kol." What does Bechoser Kol mean? So the Gemara says, top line of Mem Aleph Amar Aleph, Amar Rav Ami Amar Rav, below ner u'below shulchan, without a ner and without a shulchan. That's what choser kol means, that you're going to have nothing. Rav Chizda Amar below isha, we're talking about someone who lost his wife. Or Rav Sheshes Amar below shamish, someone who doesn't, there's no one to service him, no slaves, no servants. Rav Nachman Amar below dea, a person who doesn't have any dea, those are the people. That's what bechoser kol means. Tana, we have a brisa that says below melech below revav, without any salt and without any fats. Food that has no salt and has no fats added to it is not so geshma. Like literally the way that you grill a steak is you find a steak that's marbled and you add kosher salt and you stick it on the grill. Those are the two things that make steak taste good. If you don't have a fatty, relatively some fat in the meat and no salt, it's going to be pretty bland. Next, Amar Abai, Naktinan, we have a tradition. Ein ani ela b'deya. What does it mean to be poor? To have no knowledge. And when we were younger, there was a song that was made out of this Gemara. B'ma'arava amre, didabe kulebe. If you have this, then you have everything. If you have das, if you have knowledge, then you have everything. Dilo dabe. But if you don't have this in you, if you don't have knowledge, mabe. What do you have in you? You're empty. If you don't have das, if you are choser kol, if you have no das, it's the worst accolade. You have to have something. Dakani machaser. If you have acquired wisdom, machaser, what are you lacking? You have wisdom. You're all good to go. The lokani, but if you didn't acquire any wisdom, makani, what have you acquired? So this is the famous song that zemamar shenemar b'marava, the language in the song tidabe kulebe udulabe mabe zemamar shenemar b'marava. It's not actually the text of the Gemara. It's b'marava amre, but okay. But the Gemara says that we should hopefully try not to be choser kol and have a little bit of das. We'll stop right here. Tomorrow's shiur is not in person. I'm going to record and post. Wishing you all a beautiful couple of days, and see you back on Tuesday.